Korea, we are busy. Life is full on with work, study, self-improvement, fitness, and the list goes on. But with all that, there is something that we just can't seem to escape from, and that's the talk about drugs. The media is constantly bombarding us with horror stories of students being sold drugs at school, major celebrities being caught using illegal substances, and international traffickers bringing all kinds of substances into the country. Now, even entertainment programs and YouTube channels are covering it.
And it's not just in the media. We now see signs about this on the subway, at bus stops, and on school campuses. It's online, it's offline, it's everywhere.
Or is it? Because truth be told, I don't see drugs in my day-to-day life. I don't get offered substances on my nights out, I don't pass by needles in the park, and I don't smell it in the streets. Basically, I don't see what the media is telling me. So, am I ignoring a very rampant problem? Or does my lifestyle mean that I'm outside of the circles where such things happen? Why the disconnect?
Are drugs as big a problem in society as we are being told? Or perhaps are politicians trying to push a particular campaign to instill fear in us? Maybe they're even trying to distract us from the more pressing issues of trying to get a job or simply own a house. What's going on? We here at The Glitch, we're here to try to find out and answer some of those questions for you.
When we think of drugs, culture, and the shaping of the Western mind, we often come up with the 1960s, the Summer of Love, Woodstock, and Sgt. Pepper. But these images obscure a culture of psychological, philosophical, and aesthetic experimentation that predated the emergence of drugs as a problematic category and of the drug addict as a pathologized type.
Go back half a century to 1900 and any respectable person in Europe or America could walk into a pharmacy and buy a range of hashish pastes, exotic psychedelics, or morphine together with a handy injection kit. Opium products were on sale in Britain, and The Economist even listed it in its weekly list of commodities prices until 1916. Over in America, the typical opiate addict was an upper-class or middle-class white woman. Sigmund Freud was experimenting with cocaine as he explored inner multiplicities, believing it to be a miracle drug that would help the mind keep pace with the world's accelerations. In The Varieties of Religious Experiences, the influential philosopher William James was moved by nitrous oxide and ether, while Robert Louis Stevenson published The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, in which a mysterious white powder prompts a monstrous transformation.
In Psychonauts, Drugs, and the Making of the Modern Mind, the cultural historian Mike J. argues that the post-1800 use of mind-altering drugs was not simply for numbing pain, but rather for exploring the hidden recesses of the mind. People were plumbing the depths of their consciousness and embarking on fantastic inner quests.
The culture, the attitudes, the law, and the substances that ran through people's minds were incredibly different from what we see today. However, between 1914 and 1916, new laws were passed in the US, Britain, and France to ban or restrict the drug trade, turning psychonauts into delinquents, voyagers beyond the bounds of civil society.
That history is important because it's not just a chronicle of past events. Instead, it's a guide that illuminates the present, offering lessons, shaping our identity, and providing a map with which to navigate the future. There are certain chapters in our history that echo through time, leaving a lasting mark on the nation's collective psyche, and that is never more so true than here in Asia, where memories of the past today shape a very complex reality.
Current drug issues in Asia have roots that stretch back to the 19th century, to a period marked by geopolitical intrigue, exploitation, and a substance that has greatly affected the fortunes of millions. The Opium Wars began when China seized 1,000 tons of the substance from British smugglers and then refused to offer any compensation. This angered London and exacerbated deep-seated British grievances towards Beijing, most of these rooted in China's historical reluctance to fully open its doors to foreign goods and to display the expected deference to British influence. It was about drugs and everything else at the same time.
The conflict between the British Empire and Qing dynasty was a collision of ideologies, a clash of civilizations, and a catalyst for seismic shifts that would resonate through time, altering trade dynamics and fundamentally restructuring regional hierarchies. And then we're left with this question: do China and Britain, the East and the West, still see each other through a narcotic haze? While the Opium Wars are little more than a fading memory in Britain, China has not forgotten the defeat that demonstrated the hollowness of its hold on Asia and subsequent century of humiliation.
This is Yuanmingyuan, or the Garden of Perfect Brightness. It was a paradise on earth for the Qing emperors. Beautiful, extravagant, utterly private, and totally their creation. Not an inheritance from previous dynasties. It was both a single garden and a complex of different gardens, until British and French troops destroyed it. The torching of the Summer Palace stands as one of the greatest acts of cultural vandalism of the past 2 centuries. It became a symbol of China's subjugation at the hands of foreign powers in the 19th century, and hence a focal point of modern Chinese nationalism. In 1997, Yuanmingyuan became one of the first sites in China to be named by the Communist Party as a national base for patriotic education.
Underlying the discussions of the issue is the idea that the British were the ones that got China hooked on drugs in the first place.
To Chairman Xi Jinping, China's defeats in the Opium Wars are proof that weak countries will be defeated. One of his first public acts after he took over was, with his Politburo colleagues, to visit an exhibition at the National Museum in Beijing called The Road to Revival. It begins with the outbreak of the First Opium War and ends with China's rise under the Communist Party, represented, among other things, by nuclear missiles.
The message is clear. Don't mess with us again.
Where are we today? Asia is now the world's top producer of opiates and precursor chemicals for the production of methamphetamine. It's also the world's center for addiction to these substances.
Unlike in the West, where addiction has been seen as a medical condition, Asian countries have seen drug use as a criminal offense. China, for example, has carried out executions and imprisonment for drug use since the 1950s, and other countries have followed suit. Starting in the 1970s, countries such as Singapore and Vietnam started creating low thresholds for the imprisonment, execution of drug users and drug dealers. This was also carried out in the Philippines, where approximately 12,000 people were executed between 2016 and 2017 under then President Rodrigo Duterte's drug war.
Yet, evidence that executions serve to deter drug use and crimes in Asia, or anywhere else in the world for that matter, is virtually non-existent. So, should we still be killing people for drug use? Or should we be punishing them at all? Thailand has experimented with drug legalization and preventative rehabilitation. In April of this year, Malaysia removed a 34-year-old mandatory requirement for death penalties in drug cases, and they began a long-term program to focus on rehabilitation. So, while drug use is obviously incredibly problematic, if it's not going to be considered a crime, how should it be understood?
Addiction is a medical condition, a treatable brain disorder, not a character flaw or a form of social deviance. We can be addicted to all number of things, from chocolate, coffee, chicken, to crosswords, Instagram, and wine. In 2016, the 193 member nations of the United Nations General Assembly Special Session on Drugs unanimously voted to recognize the need to approach substance use disorders as public health issues rather than criminal offenses. Essentially, people with substance use disorders need treatment, not punishment.
And there's something in those stories. Something that can inspire. Something like a superhero. This is Robert Downey Jr. He's probably best known these days for his portrayal of Iron Man in the Avengers series. This is a character that kids all around the world imitate, copy, and look up to. But Robert Downey Jr. wasn't always a charming and lovable figure. Not so long ago, he was practically unhireable due to his drinking and drug issues, not to mention his time in prison. From 1996 through 2001, Downey was arrested several times on charges related to drugs, including cocaine, heroin, and marijuana. In 1999, he said to a judge, "It's like I have a shotgun in my mouth, and I've got my finger on the trigger, and I like the taste of the gunmetal." Thanks to medical treatment, his wife, yoga, and a lot of hard work, movie companies the world over now want to work with him. This was achieved by focusing on the health aspect of his problem rather than the criminal one. There was a redemption song for him, just like there has been for so many others. Drew Barrymore, Lindsay Lohan, Bradley Cooper, Elton John, Eminem, and the list goes on. People who are beloved today because ultimately their addiction was treated rather than just punished.
But is that possible here in Korea? This is a very conservative country when it comes to drug use, and any indication that a superstar has been using substances could be fatal to their career. Korea's own big clampdown on drugs came during the 1970s, when then President Park Chung-hee outlawed marijuana, a plant that grows naturally in this country. In doing so, he put a lot of musicians and other public figures in jail in his attempt to cleanse the country and make people battle ready for his fight against communism. And today, when we watch television and we see that a celebrity has been involved in drugs, we will generally just see the word mayak on screen. And so if you ask a person which drug the celebrity might have been using, they will not respond by saying amphetamines, LSD, marijuana, or heroin. The word instead will just be mayak, a catch-all term referring to any and all drug use, and those associated with drug use will be called yaktengi.
And while we think celebrities earn a great deal of freedom due to their money and fame, in Korea it goes the other way. Stars here become daepyeos, or representatives of the nation. The price they pay for their fame is that they're expected to live a clean and good life, at least publicly. This is why you don't see K-pop stars smoking or drinking. They're meant to be pure, whatever that means. When they fail to hold up their end of the bargain, the turn against them can be swift. Few, if any, will talk about the addiction or the psychological treatment or the mental consequences of having to survive in the industry. Here, the redemption stories, like Psy and G-Dragon, are much harder to find.
Drug control is not a science, it's history, it's culture, it's political interest, and it's public sentiment. That's why each and every case is so very, very different. There is no right answer. There are only a series of right answers. Today, here at The Glitch, we've given you some of ours. And so what do you think? Should drug use be seen through a health lens or a criminal lens? How much does history affect our views on drugs? And what do you think is going to happen in the future?
Let us know what you think. We're here and we're listening.